Mike, there was a lot more from Mike Tomlin. He did say, I'll just summarize for you, that Pickens needs to deal better with the media, needs to do a better job there, that this is a major work in progress with this guy as far as maturity. What do you make just of the fact that Tomlin did something he rarely does and granted the media's request for a second availability this week?
Well, look, it doesn't surprise me because this thing has gone off the rails, and it's so different than what we've seen from Tomlin in the past. He keeps these issues from becoming issues. We don't know that there are problems with Antonio Brown until after years go by and it finally explodes. We don't know that there are issues with Chase Claypool until they dump him onto the Bears for what became Joey Porter Jr., the de facto last pick of round one, first pick in round two in a year with only 31 first-round picks. And I said back after the Titans game where Pickens was clearly frustrated during the game, after the game, the next day, all the social media stuff that kids of that generation use to express their frustration with their employer, specifically their football team, that Tomlin already failed because it became a thing. With Tomlin, when there's a player who's a problem, it doesn't become a thing. He gets involved, and he stops it from becoming a thing. And now it's become a huge thing. And I think they're beside themselves. They just need to get through to the end of the season and figure out everything as it relates to George Pickens along with other issues. But this is a mess. And, look, I talked to Pickens after they beat the Ravens, and I guess I could see this coming, although I didn't think he was going to do it. It is frustrating when you know you're a very talented player and they don't do anything to try to get the ball in your hands. And I never have felt this year that they've really tried to scheme to get the ball in his hands, and maybe it was just a matter of time before it all imploded. But we've seen with other players in the past, and there are guys we don't know about, I believe, that Tomlin has kept them in line, and they never had that moment that Pickens has had now multiple times, starting with the Titans game.
Do you think George Pickens wants to be traded?
I'd want to be traded. So I think he does. There's just nothing he can do about it now because they can't trade him until the league year begins in mid-March. Can't demand a trade when you're stuck at least until after the season ends. But I assume behind the scenes you're going to have an effort to get him out of there. Or maybe he waits and sees what happens because, guys, for the first time since Mike Tomlin became the coach, I feel like it's time for a divorce or whatever label they want to apply. I feel like it's time for the two sides to go their separate ways.
What has changed your mind on that front, Mike? Because I know we talk to you every week, which we love doing, and I know that you have been loath to go in that direction. So what has happened lately, or what specific thing maybe has made you feel that way about this?
One, they stink. Two, Tomlin's message isn't working anymore. It's not resonating with all the team, as evidenced by the Pickens situation. And three, I think one of these other teams, based upon everything that's gone on, one of these other teams is going to call Art Rooney after the season ends, if not sooner. The one thing that we never really know, because they're not going to come out and say it, all the stuff that goes on before the coaching searches begin, aimed at kind of cracking the code and setting the table for the coaching moves to come. If there's a team out there that's interested in Tomlin, I would submit to you that there's already been an inquiry made through intermediaries, back channels, whatever, to find out, one, are the Steelers amenable to making a deal? Two, is Tomlin interested? And what would it take, in theory, hypothetically, to get him? I'd be shocked if those feelers haven't been put out already. And then once the season ends, we just see how the dominoes fall. But this is the time when the dominoes get set up. But I feel like between the Commanders, Chargers, Falcons maybe, Jets maybe, we know how Aaron Rodgers feels about Mike Tomlin. If they're going to move on from Robert Saleh, the one guy that I would say is go get Mike Tomlin. You have your defensive head coach, and you've got Rodgers and his buddy Nathaniel Hackett running the offense. I don't know that Tomlin will want that. I mean, that's part of what you find out now. What does Mike Tomlin want? Is he interested in leaving? Are the Steelers interested in moving on? And what would it take to do it? I just feel like we're moving in that direction. The last 3 weeks have been a disaster. The last 3 games, not Steelers football, not Tomlin football. And it's just, to me, evidence. It's a symptom of a deeper disease that only gets eradicated by the two sides going their separate ways.
Mike, usually The old joke used to be in every relationship, one side likes the other, is more into the other. That was usually in my college relationships. I was the one more into the girl than she was into me. Who do you think is more wanting to have a split if both sides do? Do you think it's more Tomlin wants a new start, or the Steelers want to move on from him, if you had to guess?
I almost feel like this is the posture that relationships are in sometime when one side wants it to end and is trying to do everything they can to get the other side to be the one to leave. I think the Steelers are the ones that want it to end. You know, they don't fire anybody, so Tomlin's got to be the one to want to leave. And I think the Steelers, recognizing Tomlin's got 1 year left on his contract, I don't know what they're going to get for him. You know, John Gruden only had 1 year left on his contract when the Buccaneers gave up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and $8 million in cash 22 years ago. And Gruden went to a team that had a young defensive backs coach named Mike Tomlin that he inherited from the prior staff. But I don't think it's going to be nearly that much. But anything they get, if this gets them out of a mess that they otherwise can't get out of without firing him, then you know, I can't imagine they put the thumb on the scale. They be reasonable, they work out a deal, and they move on. And I'd love to see one of these coaches consciously and deliberately become a free agent. That never happens. You never have a coach basically take the position, I'm finishing my contract, and then I'm going wherever the hell I want to go. There's no salary cap. There's no franchise tag. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. And Tomlin's 1 year away from leaving that way if he wants to.
All right, Mike, I give you 3 scenarios. Which is the most likely? Ready? Mike Tomlin is back with the Steelers next year, but not George Pickens. George Pickens is back with the Steelers next year, but not Mike Tomlin, or they're both gone.
Well, fourth scenario, Mike Tomlin and George Pickens on the same team somewhere else is the least likely. So that ain't happening. I'd say of those that you gave me, I would say Tomlin gone, Pickens stays, but that's just, you're giving me 3 to choose.
I know, just spitballing there.
I'm picking door number 3. It just really, for the first time ever, it feels like this thing is careening toward Tomlin being gone. And there's no reason for the Steelers to move Pickens. They're not going to get anything for him. If they trade him at this point, they need to hope that they can get through to him with a new coach. And every coach thinks he's the one that's going to get through to a quarterback. And let me tell you, the best thing to get through to George Pickens is an offense that uses him to his full capacity. Think back to what Bill Belichick said after the loss to the Patriots. They had 2 objectives. They had 2 players they wanted to neutralize, T.J. Watt and George Pickens. People know how good this guy is. A new coach is going to want George Pickens to be there.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.